Good evening. The CPC meeting, the annual special meeting of the Community Preservation Committee will come to order tonight. We're delighted to have a great group of guests. So I think Stuart, Joanna, Glenn, and Maggie, that's great. Thank you so much for coming. I'd like to just make a few very brief remarks. We are actually close to 25 years into CPA, and I always tell people North Andover was the first town in the Commonwealth to have a CPC committee. We were the second one to vote, but that's because there was a snowstorm. We would have been first. But, you know, we're the first with the committee. And I think the big thing is it's been extraordinarily successful. The things that have happened over the last 25 years are great. And if you look, we've preserved over 300 acres of open space throughout the town. And I want to actually show you this picture because this is from our I'll pass it around to everybody. This was one of our very first open space projects for Half Mile Hill. And the thing that's amazing is that's nearly 25 years old. So the two girls in the picture are over 30 years old now. And but that's what's special about it, because Terry just showed me a picture of his two grandkids up on the same hill today. It looks exactly the same. So that's really, in a nutshell, I think what CPA is about and what the benefit it is. But in addition to that, you know, we've done a tremendous number of historical preservation programs that have been great. I mean, this building right where we are, a lot of that is CPA money. We have an ongoing program with Stevens Estate, and it helps stabilize it in tough times until it's able to run on its own. And also, we've had a great partnership with the Historical Society, and I think that's great too. And we've helped preserve a lot of the great buildings and artifacts and so forth. And then in the area of housing, we've done one really large project that was with a private developer, Stevens Corner, and quite a few projects over the years with the Housing Authority. So it's, I think, been a success all around. We've probably gotten close to 15 million of matching funds from the state over the lifetime of the program. And we've also leveraged probably over $5 million of private grants, people making individual contributions, and so forth over the years. So that's all the benefit of CPA. So we're very excited about that. So we have a nice agenda tonight. Our first speaker is Stuart Saganor, who is the head of the Community Preservation Coalition at the state level, who's been extraordinarily helpful to us over the years. Every time we need guidance in any particular issue, he's always there. Because he lives in Boxford, we can grab him. But I think at the state level, with all the politicking and stuff that goes on, and good times and bad times and so forth, they've been there putting forth the interests of CPA. So, Stuart, thank you for coming tonight, and we look forward to your presentation.
I just looked up your state match figures, and you were right on. $15,357,869 has come to the town of North Andover from CPA, the CPA Trust Fund. And in fact, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at this year's match because the trust fund distribution comes out tomorrow. And I'm glad you also mentioned the first versus second community to adopt CPA. Because the competition for years was between Bedford and North Andover, who both were kind of claiming first dibs. And if any of you know Brad Wakeman, who was on the CPC for a long time, about 8 years ago, Brad calls me and says, Stuart, we got to get to the bottom of this situation and figure out, because I think we were first. So we did a ton of extensive research, and it's exactly what John said. You know, you would have been first, but there was a postponement of the town meeting because of a snowstorm, and Bedford snuck in before they were able to reschedule the town meeting. So Bedford is in fact the first, but Brad, I think, has claimed you formed your CPC first before anyone else, and I think Brad claimed to be the first appointee to the CPC as well.
May very well have been,
So the first in the entire state, so that's exciting. So John asked me to come here tonight just to give a brief overview of what's happening with CPA across the state. I only have about 10 slides or so not a ton of information, but it's always great to kind of climb up and get a high-level overview of what's happening, because it does affect what goes on in each community. As John said, I'm the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition. We are a nonprofit based in Boston, but we're really just a combobulation of all these other nonprofits that you recognize on the screen probably. The one down in the bottom left corner, the Trust for Public Land, was actually the organization that did that project that was on the picture that was passed around, and one or two more after that protecting the watershed around the reservoir. And TPL has also been good enough to house our organization in their offices for well over 20 years now. So we have a close kinship with that organization, but you can see we have housing organizations and historic organizations. We have a steering committee, and some of the members of our steering committee actually come from local CPCs, like the North Andover CPC. And anywhere you look in the state, CPA has had a huge impact. We have 201 communities now, so well over half the communities in the state have CPA. But because the past decade or so, a lot of the larger municipalities have come into the program, almost 3/4 of the people that live in the state now live in a CPA community. So it's been pretty successful. I love the bottom statistic, the fact that every single community that has ever adopted this program has stayed in the program, found it to be incredibly useful. I don't know if we'll be able to say that forever, but it's been 25 years, and still we have never had a community say they didn't want to be in the program anymore. So this is my favorite map of Massachusetts, the one that shows all the CPA communities. Green is the towns, and the orangish, sickly colored yellow, which appears differently on every projector that I projected upon, is the cities that have CPA. And the little stars are the most recent class of CPA adopting communities. In the past year, we've had 5 new communities that have passed, mostly on the smaller side. I don't know if we don't have too many cities in the state left that haven't had CPA, but there are some, Lawrence and Haverhill being 2 examples close by here. You can see there's some patterns to this. We definitely have more participation in the eastern part of the state, and in the Connecticut River Valley, where agricultural land protection is really a big part of what they do, a growing participation in the Berkshires as well. And any way you look at the program, whether it's the map you saw or the statistics that are on the screen in front of you, it really has been a huge success. Believe it or not, the money with the state match and the local money adds up to almost $3.5 billion in just over 23, 24 years or so. It took a couple years for the program to get going in the beginning. So that's a huge impact. Tomorrow we'll send out the state match information, and we calculated that there was just shy of $300 million put into CPA last year. So next year will be over $300 million every single year that goes for these 4 areas of CPA. It is a restricted fund, so the money can only be spent on these 4 areas of the program, and you can see the impact it's had statewide in these 4 areas. We spend a lot of time up at the State House working with them on CPA, not only discussing legislation that has been proposed at the State House that we might have to do some education on, but also advancing opportunities that communities bring to us and say, hey, could we change the program in this way? It would be more useful to us. So there's been, I think, 12 amendments to CPA over the years. And a lot of the things you do, including the ability to restore historic buildings like this one and the ability to rehab parks and playgrounds, were not a part of the original legislation the way they were formed. And so there have been amendments along the way to make those categories much more useful. But of course, the biggest thing from the State House is the money that comes in from the state matching funds. And you're the first group to see that this year's match is going to be 16.9%. When we talk about percentages on the match, it's a percentage of what each community raised locally. So Gosnold is the smallest community in the state that has CPA. Does anyone know where Gosnold is by chance? What's that? It is an island, yep. So there's Nantucket, and then Martha's Vineyard, which has 6 towns on it. And then there's this long string of islands called the St. Elizabeth Islands. And that is the town of Gosnold. Population, year-round population 50. You might recognize the last island where all the population is. It's Cuttyhunk, which is a big sailing community. So the town of Gosnold raises a whopping $5,000 a year from CPA. So they got a check from the trust fund last year of 16.9% of $5,000. Boston is the largest CPA community. They raise about $27 million. They got 16.9% of $27 million. So that's the way the percentages work on the trust fund. Communities that adopted CPA at 3%, which is the highest level you can go, get more than that because there is a bonus round for communities that are at 3%. And remind me, John, you are not at 3%,
No,
are you?
we are.
You are at 3%. Okay.
Right, yeah.
So you'll get higher than 16.9% when the spreadsheet comes out tomorrow, because there will be a second and third round. If you want, I can cheat and look that up on my phone afterwards. You'll see it in your email tomorrow morning. It's going out. It's a little bit lower than last year, and honestly, this is a low time for the trust fund, and we're not happy about it. We really would like to see the match in the 30% range. That's really a nice, robust match that allows communities to do great projects while not, taking $300 million a year, which would not be sustainable as a match. So we are working with the legislature and exploring different ideas for new revenue to keep that match robust, because without any action from the legislature, it will continue to fall really slightly every year, but we don't want to see that happen too much more in the future. So stay tuned for more information on that matching situation. So one last thing I wanted to talk about tonight was the housing category of CPA. It's definitely getting the most attention right now, particularly from the state government and the legislature. As you know, housing is the biggest problem in our Commonwealth. There just aren't enough places for people to live, whether it's market rate or even affordable places. And it is definitely hurting our economy, and it will hurt even more if the situation gets worse. So it's really incumbent upon everyone, since one of the 4 categories of CPA, to do whatever they can to help out in the housing category. These are pictures of all different CPA housing developments, and I'll bet you Stevens Corner is on there. That was the nursing home, right? That was converted, yeah. Because that's one of the terrific CPA projects across the state. So, we really think CPA can really help in this regard. There's $300 million a year available. Not all of it's going to go to housing by any stretch of the imagination, but it can make quite a dent. But it's a complicated category. It's expensive. It takes years to develop. It's controversial. We're a very, small state with land. There's not a lot of available land. So it's a hard category, and it really takes intention on the part of the CPC and the community to, address the housing needs locally. But there's a lot of different ways to do that. Building new homes is certainly the most popular way to add new units, but it's not the only way. For example, Stevens Corner, when that nursing home closed, was what we call adaptive reuse, taking an existing building and turning it into affordable housing. A lot of times they're town-owned buildings, like this library in Cohasset that was a surplus and was converted to 2 units of affordable housing, and a lot of time they are privately owned buildings like Stevens Corner. As a matter of fact, I remember I came to the groundbreaking that you had, and the Secretary of Economic Development, Greg Bielecki, was there. And there was a handout, and it described all the different revenue sources that had to go into that project. It was like a $30 million project. And one of the things that he was amazed about, and you folks emphasized during the presentation, is CPA was the first money into the program. And the fact that it got a vote at town meeting to endorse it, it made it far easier for the developer to then go out and, as John was talking about, leverage that funding with state, federal, private, and bank financing. So it really can be very powerful to have just a little bit of, you put 400,000 into that project, I think. So, in the grand scheme of the budget, it was small, but it was the key piece because it came first, and really allowed folks to understand that the town was behind this project. So we've had a lot of privately owned adaptive reuse projects. This is the old Ames Shovel Shop in Easton, down on the South Shore, that is now affordable housing. Communities also partner with nonprofit developers like Habitat for Humanity. There are over 50 communities that have done habitat build projects using CPA funds. So they're of course the most affordable builder of housing because they use so much donated goods and donated time. No one can build a house for less money than Habitat can. It's really a tremendous way to get a lot of bang for your buck. CPA can also work with existing developers who are putting up housing by buying some of the units in the development, and instead of having those units be market rate, mark them down to the affordable rate. And then the difference between those two prices is the subsidy that comes from CPA. Another way to create housing with actually not building new units, because these units are going to be there no matter what. It's just a question of how many of them will be market rate, and can we make more of them affordable by using some CPA funds. We've had CPA used for veterans housing. On the right is a group home for veterans in Quincy and Weymouth and Dartmouth, and a lot of other communities have done that. The one on the left is a fascinating project. That was in Lexington. That is a historic building, actually. It's an old printing factory. And it was purchased by a nonprofit called Supportive Living Incorporated. And they turned it into 9 units of affordable housing for folks with brain injuries. And it was so successful, they bought a closed inn up in Rockport and repeated the project up there using CPA funds as well. A growing use of CPA is to help developments where the deed restrictions are expiring. Most deed restrictions in Massachusetts are permanent, but a lot of the older restrictions were only for 30 years. So we're trying every year to build new and create new affordable housing, but we're losing 3,000-4,000 units every year as the deed restrictions expire. This was a development in Amherst, and it's called Rolling Ridge, and all the residents were going to be tossed out, and it was going to be turned into market rate housing because the deed restrictions were expiring. CPA put $1.5 million into the development and found a new developer to come in and keep it as an affordable development. So all these folks did not have to lose their homes. And again, CPA was the first money into that program. And then the last thing is doing limited development and using CPA funds for other parts of the project. So, for example, buying a piece of open space and doing some little limited development up along the road, and then protecting the rest as open space in back. So that's something that CPA is uniquely adapted to do because of the different funding categories that we have. You can also transfer money to a housing trust. John, do you have an affordable housing trust?
We've done that for a long time.
Great. And then, the housing trust, like this one out in Western Mass, are the real experts on housing. It's sometimes tough for a CPC to be generalist and working on all the different categories. By transferring money to the housing trust, you can have, the expertise of those folks to help with the situation. And the last thing I'll say about this issue is, at its core, CPA is really a land use program. It is not an affordable housing program. It's not an open space program or rec or historic. It's really about the best use of the limited amount of land that you have in a community to build the housing where the housing belongs and to protect the open space that should be protected. For so long in Massachusetts, we've had competing, uses for those lands, and certainly some housing has been built on land it should have not been built on. And we still have, areas of town that are previously developed that are dilapidated, old mill buildings that are empty. So why not put the housing there and protect the open space, that can be a resource for the town that way. So that's what CPA does best, is figure out the best way to use each piece of land. So those are the comments I had for you tonight. I'm happy to take any questions if folks have. I wanted to also take the opportunity to introduce Brendan Berger, who's here. Brendan is joining us in January. This is the first meeting he's been to, and you're the first folks to meet him. We're very excited that we're going to have a full-time Director of Advocacy and Research to work with the State House. So this is the guy who's going to get us more money for the CPA Trust Fund. No pressure, Brendan. I've been working on that for 20 years. I had hair when I started working on that. So I look forward to seeing what you look like with a chapeau and no hair. But we're very excited. It increases our capacity by 33% to have Brendan join us. And we're pretty excited. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take him out for a celebratory dinner and raise a toast to his new job here at the Coalition right after this. So thanks for having me, and I'm, John, happy to turn it back to you, or if any questions from the committee.
Sure, thank you. I didn't know if anybody has any questions from the committee.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On some of those things, when you talk about the CPC getting involved in like buying a purchase of land and so forth, how have you seen successful CPAs get involved kind of early on? Because I would say like kind of have a lot of the approach, and a lot of what you hear is, hey, the CPA is there for people CPC is there for people to come to you with a project. So a little bit more like on the reactive, sit back, like, okay, who's coming to us? Is it a nonprofit? Is it et cetera?
Right.
But how do the successful projects happen, and how can CPC get in on the front end?
Yeah. So there have been well over 1,000 pieces of land purchased with CPA funds, and so there are probably 1,000 answers to that question. But in general, we have turned CPA into an application-based program where people apply to the CPC. If you read the law, it says nothing about the process that communities should use to get to the point at which they spend money. The law actually starts with the phrase, the CPC shall make recommendations to town meeting for these 4 categories. So I don't think the legislature actually thought of CPA the way we've turned out to use it. I don't think they thought of it as a program that people would apply every year for funding. I think they thought of the CPC more like a capital planning committee that would analyze the needs of the town, figure out what it needed, and make recommendations on its own to town meeting. But we have not used the program that way. Really the first communities that came in, it was really the Wild West. There was no playbook for this. This program does not exist in any other part of the country. It was unique to Massachusetts, and that's the way the program has developed. And by and large, that works really well in 3 of the 4 categories. I was chair of my CPC in Boxford for 7 years before I joined the Coalition in 2006. We never got one housing application. And in fact, I've stayed close to the CPC, obviously, since I left. They still, 24 years later, have never had an application because it's very hard to build housing in a town that has private wells and private septic and very expensive land. You have the expensive land part. You do have, some of the town is sewered, right? Not all of it. In the housing category, it's really difficult to sit back and expect that you're going to make a dent and provide more affordable housing by just being an application-based committee. On the other hand, you're not housing experts either. So the 2 things that work best for the CPC to be more proactive are, number 1, to invest in hiring someone, probably a part-time person, either as a consultant or for the town as a housing coordinator. We have a bunch of towns. It's the only time CPA funds can be spent on salaries other than an administrator for the business of the committee. The only other salary a CPA can pay would be in the housing category. And so that's one way. It's very difficult for volunteers to make a dent in the housing category. So, you know, yeah, absolutely. There's a whole article on our website in the technical assistance section. I think it's called Housing Coordinators Making Waves Across the Commonwealth. And it talks about a couple communities up near here, fairly close to here. Groton is one of them, and Carlisle is the other that it profiles in this article on our tech. If you can't find that article, email me tomorrow, and we'll be happy to send that to you. So what I recommend to CPCs that are struggling a little bit with the housing is don't try to hit a home run off the bat. Make your first investment into getting a professional to help you. And maybe it's not practical to have, you know, a new employee. You have to go through the personnel board and all that, and maybe that's not practical. But a consultant certainly could be there to develop it. And then the other thing is to really work closely with the Housing Trust. I mean, you know, your job is to spend the CPA money appropriately, but you've got 4 categories to deal with. Their job is to develop more affordable housing. So really having joint meetings 2 or 3 times a year, really digging into what they're working on and helping them, trying to anticipate their needs and provide some money for them if they've got things coming up. You know, when rubber meets the road, it's probably going to be the Housing Trust that's going to be leading the way on these things. So those are the 2 ways that I think you can get started. It's also great to just invite housing professionals who work in North Andover and surrounding towns to come talk to you. Have developers come in. They'll tell you, here's what we need to make a successful development. Here's the scale we need. Here's how many units we need. Here's how much land we need. Here's how much it costs. You know, have Habitat come in and talk with you. Have community development corporations. There's a great one in Beverly called Harbor Lights that's done a ton of CPA development. How you're familiar with Harbor Lights? Yeah, they're incredible.
They've done some pretty great
I'm a little biased because Andrew DeFranza, the executive director, is on our steering committee. But I've attended more than one groundbreaking of CPA-funded developments that Andrew and Harbor Lights have done. So I'm glad you've heard great things about them.
I used to live in Salem, and the whole Anchor, those projects are amazing. I
Yeah.
went to they had an open house a couple of weeks ago that I went to. It was amazing what they did and how they packaged all the resources that they got to make that happen. It was wild. And
Yeah.
beautiful. Those units were beautiful.
They're very good about uncovering all the leveraging money, and they're also really good about listening very carefully to what the community wants. They don't want to come in and fight. They want to come in and make it a really great resource for the community. So inviting those folks in throughout the year to talk to you, you'll learn a lot, and you'll get an understanding of how this works and what things that you can do. So I'd encourage you folks to reach out to some of those types of organizations and just have them come talk to you. So those are hopefully that helps.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and John, thanks for inviting. Thanks for inviting Stuart. Thank you for coming.
Happy to
I
do it.
found so this is my 3rd year sitting here, and I found your website to be extremely helpful.
Great.
To understand the CPA, and I was so. You have 2 housing authority commissioners sitting on this board. So I was excited to hear you kind of put housing front and center and sort of call that out, so thank you. I was actually going to ask you about that, but you answered a little bit of my questions. What
Right.
more can we do? What are some of the things we can do? And I was going to ask you if you agreed with this little quote from a recent Globe editorial. I think I know the answer now that I've heard you talk for the last 10 or so minutes, but it says, "The Community Preservation Act has certainly spurred a lot of meaningful investment in improving infrastructure and the quality of life in the places that adopted it. It hasn't necessarily succeeded in getting communities to strike the right balance between housing, recreational, and historic preservation needs. Specifically, the law has done a great deal in promoting parks and maintaining old buildings and sites, but communities have by and large failed to invest an equal amount of the law's resources into building more housing units." I assume you agree with that, and do you or don't you? And one of the things that struck me when I joined the board is how contradictory, and you talked about how this is a land use board, but how contradictory each piece sort of is, right? If we have an empty space here in North Andover, there's a group of folks that want to turn it into an athletic field. There's a group of folks that might want to keep it open space. There's a group of folks that think the best use is to build affordable housing. So just curious your feedback on that, and how have some of the best boards that have done the best, figuring out that land use, are there any other things that they're doing that we could be doing?
Right.
And it sounds like we've done, by the way, maybe a little bit better than most too, so I don't mean to talk down this board now.
Yeah, it's hard to generalize. I mean, there are definitely communities where I would agree with that statement, who have maybe gone out of their way to not spend a lot of money in the housing category, unfortunately. And there are other communities who have done an amazing job. So in general, I really don't agree with that category, with that statement, because it's really impossible to generalize. If you asked about, Cambridge or Salem or Chelsea, what they've done with affordable housing has been incredible. Even Carlisle has done a fantastic job with affordable housing. So it's really hard to generalize because it's true in some communities and not true in other communities. And that's one of the benefits of CPA. It is a program where you folks make the decision locally and the state doesn't tell you what to do with your money. And so inherently, that's going to lead communities to do what they're comfortable with and what they like to do. And
How about the boards that you've seen, like I said, that are measuring how do we best use partial A? Like how do the best sort of towns, what are there some approaches that stick out to you that these people are really doing it the right way?
Yeah, good question. I think it all starts with the CPA plan. And I find that communities that have had CPA for a long time, like North Andover and my town, don't necessarily put a lot of effort into that planning part of the process. So I don't know if you have a CPA plan. It is required by the law, and I don't know if you update it every year. That's also required by the law. But I find that a lot of the early communities missed that step. I didn't know about it when I was chair of my CPC in 2001 because it was the Wild West of CPA. None of us really knew exactly how the program worked. So a really good CPA plan can pre-identify the needs of the town. So if the need of the town is, we have to run our soccer games over in Boxford or over in Andover because we don't have enough fields, well then, building more fields becomes a priority. But if you, identify the waiting list at the housing authority is 1,000 people long, particularly for seniors, well, then that's obviously a huge need in town. So it really begins with good planning to figure out if you wait until the parcel is available, it's probably much more difficult because you don't have a lot of time. I'm amazed in Massachusetts. Most of our land that's undeveloped has been in the same family for centuries, transferred and transferred and transferred. But when they go to sell, it's a raging emergency. They have to close by December 31st or else, Armageddon.
We've seen that.
So you usually don't have any time. You usually have people coming out of the woodworks with different competing needs for that. It becomes very political, and it's very hard to make the right decision at that point. So it really starts with the planning and figuring out what you want ahead of time and being more intentional about that.
Is there any questions from the audience, Stuart? I just think because we have other people.
Yep.
We could go on for
We
hours,
go on,
Stuart.
yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's great. And we will probably harangue you from time to time with questions and advice
Great.
and so forth.
Happy to do it. I love
Thank
working
you.
with North Andover. It's a great CPA community, and we're here for you anytime.
Great, good. Well, thank you. This was a great presentation.
All right.
Really loved
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, so-
Appreciate it.
So, I wonder who at this point drew the short straw wants to go next. Joanna, do you want to talk a little bit about just what's happening with the Historical Society and what you're thinking?
I'm Joanna Kerr with the North Andover Historical Society. We're kind of wrapping up some big projects from CPA for the Parson Barnard House and Johnson Cottage. that have been taking place over the last 3 years. So right now, currently right now, we are having our insulation installed at the Parson Barnard House. We've just had it installed at Johnson Cottage. These are two beautiful historic house museums that we have the open houses to the public. We open for trails and sales every September. We have a lot of homeschool classes as well as North Andover Public Schools and Lawrence Public Schools. School children going through these historic houses. So we're kind of excited. 2025 was the year of our insulation to kind of wrap up a big theme of sustainable stewardship in these historic houses. For 2027 and 2026, FY 2027 for the town, I wanted to kind of ease off a little bit, not exactly put my foot on the brake, but I've got Stan Limper on my board, and he is very, very forceful and very, very enthusiastic in keeping it going, because obviously there's still a lot of work to do. These are old houses and they will constantly need work, but I'm really proud that we've been able to accomplish what we've accomplished just in the past 2 years with the CPC grant that we got in 22, 23 and 25. So there will be some smaller projects coming on board for the two historic properties, and I personally am excited to one day have the Stevens Centre be turned into a historic property. It was built in 1960. And obviously doesn't meet the requirements for a historic property right now for the town of North Andover, which is 100 years old or more. So maybe another 25 years we'll be there with the Stevens Centre. Other than that, we're really busy with a lot of projects. We've got a strategic planning committee working on a new strategic plan for the next 3 years. Of course, CPC possibilities will be kind of wound into that too, if they're available. So I really appreciate the time and the invitation from Zach to come and speak to you all tonight. It was great to hear Stuart speak, especially about affordable housing, because I know I'm the perennial renter in North Andover myself. It would be nice to have more houses available at market or lower rate, but and it's really interesting the dichotomy between my job is working in historic preservation and the affordable housing situation that we have in town. I do think it's really important for the town of North Andover that we cherish our history. We've got a really strong, proud history, and it will always be a town that matters a lot to people who love history. We speak to hundreds, maybe thousands of people from around the country now that have ancestry in North Andover, and they want to come back and see where their ancestors came from. And there's millions of people who originated from here, and I'm kind of proud to be in the position to share those stories with them and some of our artifacts. So, and as well to teach my son has just graduated from North Andover High in May, and trying to impress the importance of learning from history so that we know who we are today, so that we know that we have choices to make in the future, and kind of learning about history helps us understand where we are and making those right choices. So I'm really happy to be in this position, and thank you for the time. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Go ahead. Joanna, are you, it sounds like you're not planning on anything this year.
Not really, no.
Just go to the microphone.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm sorry. We said we were going to take a small break this year. I know I've got a debate with Stan coming up on that. We're actually applying for Preservation Massachusetts funds, a small grant, to do some more repairs on the barn at the Parson Barnard House, but we were going to give it a break this year for community preservation. Thank you.
Good. Glenn, you want to go next?
Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm Glenn Espesley, and I run Friends of North Andover Trails. We are an all-volunteer organization that has been around for, I would say, about 20 years. Our primary purpose is to do trail maintenance, keep the trails open in town. But over the years, we've branched out to outreach, leading walks, and doing construction on boardwalks and bridges so that people can, get through the trails without getting their feet muddy and explore a little more of the trails than they normally would be able to. I think we've received 4 CPA grants over the years, and the one that is ongoing now that we're working on is at Mazarenko Farm. We've installed, I think by now, about 400 feet of boardwalk on the Scout Trail, and we've got another workday coming up, I think later in November, to install the next batch of boardwalks. Each one we do, we have to carry the wood further into the woods, so this one's going to be the painful one. But pretty much, I think that's probably the last workday we're going to do on this project.
Glenn, one thing is, it's all volunteers to do the work, right?
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it. It's like the speed of the projects, can depend a lot on just people's free time or what people's motivations and whether whether they're busy at work can affect the speed of the project. So we very much appreciate the fact that these grants are kind of ongoing and that we can take our time. If something needs to take a little extra time, we're able to do that and keep the grant open. This one I anticipate will be wrapping up by the end of the year, unless there's some big freak snowstorm.
Yeah. And one of the things, just to add, I think, is sweat equity has always been part of the CPA model in North Andover. And Terry, I know a lot of the projects that you've done and Rick have done have worked because people contributed a lot of their own time and effort into it as well. So it's awesome to get people to do that. So.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as the grants themselves, they're I think on the scale of simplest to most complicated, they're the simplest. The CPA funds are buying us wood and screws and nails, and we go out and use them. And if we need more, we order more. So they're extraordinarily simple. So we also
Guide's still up to date?
no, the guidebook is 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So Stan can tell you that we've been selling the same guide for 10 years, and the second edition has been in the works for a couple of years now.
Okay.
So it will.
Sold maybe 3,000 guides in 10 years. Which is a pretty amazing coverage. And it's still, people still buy it.
Yeah, we also do projects that are kind of self-funded. When we go to do a project, we kind of have options for how we'll fund it. And another nice thing about the community preservation grants is the application project process is not that complicated. It's pretty straightforward as grants go. I mean, we've received grants from the state and other sources over the years, and those grants can be extraordinarily difficult and seem like another full-time job just getting the grant. Where CPC is grant money can be easier to for these simple projects at least, and the amount we can ask for, we can ask for a tiny amount of money or a larger amount of money.
Are you going to have anything coming in this year for any projects coming up? Or is this?
We have some ideas of projects we'd like to do, but one of the kind of the policies we've had over the years is to try and finish what we started and not go starting a new project when we're still working on the next. So we may be coming and looking for some funds for a new boardwalk, but I'm not exactly sure yet.
Okay.
And
How about open space advocacy? I mean, you've done a fair amount of that yourself, right?
the trail group is kind of like a definitely sort of an eyes in the sky sort of advocacy group watching open space. We've never really protected any open space ourselves, I guess you could say. But North Andover is kind of like in this interesting spot where we don't have like an Avis or a BTA Bolt we don't have a town land trust that, you know, identifies that open space protection. The CPC has played a big role in that. I know we're lucky to have Essex County Greenbelt. I think in my personal capacity, I've, you know, written letters of encouragement and made cool maps for the applications. Speaking of which, we have a really cool map that is coming out with showing all the open space around the lake and all the dates of protection and everything. So that's coming soon.
Nice.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Glenn?
No, just thank you for.
Thank you for what you do, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming in. Maggie, do you want to come up next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie Clary. I'm the director of the North Andover Housing Authority. First off, I want to say we're very grateful for everything the CPC has given the Housing Authority in the past. My colleagues at housing authorities in other towns are, you know, sometimes like the family housing project that was funded a few years ago. I mentioned that and everyone's, wow, how'd you get the state to pay for that? And I said, oh, we had, you know, CPC funds helped us. And so a lot of my colleagues are very jealous of the CPC in North Andover and that we have the support of the Housing Authority. We have 2 open projects right now. One is the Folds Terrace roof replacement and Fountain Drive concrete entryway, stoop, and railing repair project. This is kind of like 2 projects in one. It was one application. The Folds Terrace roof replacement portion is complete. New roofs were installed on all buildings at Folds Terrace in 2022 by WPI Construction. And we are now working on the Fountain Drive stoop and entryway portion of the project. We're working with civil engineering firm Allen and Major Associates, and basically the current stairs and a lot of the ramps there do not comply with today's ADA accessibility requirements. They're way steeper than at the time it was allowed, but right now they're a lot steeper than they should be. The community room ramp needs upgrading. So the project will make considerable accessibility upgrades to the entire complex, leveling ramps and sloped walkways and adding and upgrading existing railings. And we're scheduled to go out for a bid for a contractor in early 2026, and the total estimated construction cost for that is $341,000. So we are going to use the remaining $217,000 from the CPC award to fund that project. The other one that we have open is the generator at Folds Terrace. The CPC has funded generators for a lot of our complexes in the past. Fountain Drive, Bingham Way, Murkowski Meadows, and they have come in very handy. Huge benefit to the residents whenever we've lost power. You know, they've been able to go to the community rooms, make coffee, charge phones, have the heat, and that was all thanks to the CPC. I keep confusing A and C. Okay. Well, so those have been huge, and we have one project open right now to fund a generator at Folds Terrace. We are working with Rogue Engineering on plans for the project, and we are hoping to use the existing concrete pad that's underneath an obsolete antenna tower there. The removal of the tower is going to be added to the scope of the project, but not paid for with any of the CPC funding. And once Rogue Engineering has submitted the plans and construction documents to the state, they'll be approved by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And after that, we can go out to a bid for a contractor, and that will likely happen late winter, early spring 2026. So those are the 2 open projects we have right now. We do have a project in mind for 2026 funding. We will be applying. And you know, I had been, at previous meetings, I had mentioned that I was thinking on a smaller scale, you know, like thinking of funding from the state, a $75,000 grant was a lot to me. And so, you know, I know the family housing project that was funded by the CPA award, oh, sorry, I'm getting nervous now, by Community Preservation Committee, I think it was $1.8 million, and we did major kitchen and bathroom renovations. We were able to preserve 24 units of affordable family housing. So we'd like to do the same at Fountain Drive. Now that we're doing these accessibility upgrades outside, we'd like to do some of that inside as well. You know, all of these units are first floor, so they all have bathtubs. Nobody's taking a bath anymore. You know, we'd like to make considerable upgrades to the bathrooms, increasing accessibility, you know, making accessible showers. So between the combination of the ramps and the first floor entries, would be a huge way for us to preserve our housing. You know, we do have some complexes that have second floor units, like McCabe Court and Bingham Way and Folds Terrace. And, you know, those units are always tougher to fill. We'll call someone who's been on the waiting list and, you know, say, oh, you know, you came to the top of the list. Do you want to come look at the apartment? Are you able to do stairs? No. You know, so then they have to wait. So this would really increase the available units for our residents if they could, you know, all take units at Fountain Drive. And another thing, allowing them to remain in their homes longer, remain in the community that they live in longer with all their community supports. Right now, we only have 3 vacant units in the whole housing authority. This is the lowest number of units we've had available in over 10 years. So we're really proud of that. We have 297 total units, 145 housing choice vouchers. Some of these vouchers are at Stevens Corner, so you know, the housing authority has benefited from that as well, even though, you know, it's not a direct relation to Stevens Corner. We are working with HUD to possibly reposition our federal public housing portfolio of 105 units. This means we may be switching from the federal public housing program to a project-based voucher program. It would keep our units affordable, but we'd be able to raise the contract rents. Right now in our federal public housing, the highest rent someone can pay is $875 a month. This would allow us to boost the rent up to $2,000 a month, which is the small area fair market rent for North Andover, without the tenant having to have a change in their rent. So their rent would still be income-based, but the contract rent would be $2,000, so they might pay their $500, and then we would get a $1,500 payment from HUD every month for it. So we're working on that right now, and then we'd be able to. The long-term goal of this is to, you know, leverage the increased income from that to be able to possibly develop more housing. By doing this, we'd also be able to keep our fair cloth limit, which is the number of public housing units that we're allowed by HUD, which is 105. So if we switch to project-based vouchers, we still technically would have 105 potential units that we could make as public housing. So that's, yes.
For people.
There's never an easy answer for that. The wait list is different for our state-funded properties and our federal funded properties. So Murkowski Meadows and McCabe Court are funded by HUD, federal money. They're a little more hands-off. You know, we have the waiting list. We have a local preference. So if you live or work in North Andover, you get the local preference. So most seniors or disabled people who are North Andover residents can be housed in about 2 years maximum, which is pretty good. You know, talking to colleagues around the state, like, that's not a bad
Pretty
wait
good
list.
comparably.
Yes, yeah, pretty good comparably. And that's why I always advise people, you know, if you're thinking about it, get on the list. Doesn't hurt to get on the list. You know, you fill it out, you're on there. The state list is a different story. It's a centralized list. It's CHAMP is the application, Common Housing Application for Massachusetts Public Housing. So applicants can go on and apply to any housing authority, as many housing authorities as they want by just clicking a mouse. That has there's been a lot of kinks with that. You know, people think they want to live in North Andover, but they check off North Andover, but, you know, if they're from Holyoke, when their name gets called, they don't actually want to move here. And so it takes a long time, but so long answer. On the state side, it's a longer wait for a local resident. For families right now, all 27 out of 28 of our units are filled. We have a project going on right now to renovate 18 Ashland Street, and then that one will be back and able to be filled. But for families, it's very long because there's not as much turnover. You know, if someone moves in with young children, they may be there for the next 15 years or so. So for seniors, 2 years if they apply for federal and they're local. If they're not local, it's harder, yeah, to get in. Does anybody have any other questions? I hope that wasn't too rambling.
If you do renovate
Mm-hmm.
the apartments,
Yes.
what will you do with the tenant one? Are you going to do them as they empty, or are you going to relocate people? Or?
That is a good question, and one of the harder parts of a project like this. We would definitely relocate them, most likely temporarily, unless people prefer to stay where they get transferred to. The project would involve asbestos and lead paint abatement, so even if they had, and there's only one bathroom, so when we did it at family housing, we got a vacant unit. We used that as like a hotel unit, kind of. We rented furniture. We worked with a relocation consultant, and we set up cable and internet, and people were relocated for about 3 weeks. I'd hope it would be smaller, a shorter period of time with seniors. What we did in the past too was, we could offer, we're going to be in your unit doing work for 3 weeks. You can't be here. We can relocate you to a vacant unit that you could just move to, which I doubt people would do that because they'd say, oh, I'm going to get a remodeled unit. I want to go back to my old unit. Other things is we could give a stipend to people if they want to go stay with family temporarily, like a meal stipend type of thing. And that is usually easier and actually more cost effective than having to do everything with the relocation. But that is definitely one of the more complicated steps of a project like this. And the state does require that everybody has the right to return to their unit if that's what they choose. Yep.
Great, good, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I think that concludes our formal speakers, but, Steve, Steve, if you want to come up, please. Yeah, that's great, yes. I know you weren't on the original list, but I figured you were here for a good reason, so, yes. Yes, great, thank you.
Steve Nugent, Athletic Director at the high school, speaking on behalf of the public schools. So I wanted to convey our intentions to put forth a couple of projects. The first one being something that's a larger scope. And just to kind of give a quick history, really, I think 3 years ago, you all approved a nice, it was around $200,000 so that we could enhance existing trails and add a new trail so that our cross-country team could run at home. And the good news is they've been very successful because it's a very difficult course. So it's a distinct home field advantage, and Glenn was instrumental in helping us map that out, and it was a nice collaborative effort, and I think the town is getting a lot of use out of that. The second project, technically it's done, but it's really not open yet. So last year here, you approved some money towards the completely redoing the tennis courts and turning some of them into pickleball courts. They've been done for a while, but they've held off on putting up the soundproofing for the pickleball courts as well as the nets, just to make sure that we have a grand opening in the spring when we don't have to, kick people off the brand new courts. So if you've been by the high school, it looks beautiful. So adjacent to the tennis courts, we've through town meeting, we approved some money to renovate a grass baseball field that probably never should have been played on to begin with, and had been played on, and it's the first major renovation to anything on campus in the last 21 years. So I feel a little guilty coming back this year asking for more. However, I just want to remind the community we haven't done anything on campus for 21 years. And although we were state of the art and ahead of everybody else around us and the envy of probably any community who maybe had one turf field, we were blessed with 3. keeping those up and keeping up the track and so forth, we really hadn't done anything. So right now they just started laying turf on the brand new baseball softball complex yesterday. They're going to be done around Thanksgiving, which is great. So my goal would be to put forth a few projects, and one of them is putting lights on that field. This is kind of in concert with, potentially the phase 1 of the recplex happening over at the middle school. We're going to lose all those fields that are being used by many different youth organizations. We're going to lose a set of lights there at Hayes while that phase is being operational. So that is going to have a major impact, and my hope is that we can absorb many of the youth groups and the light capacity, because we've doubled the capacity of an already existing field. We don't have to do any land purchase. We don't have to do anything else. The field will be done basically by December. So we would be adding lights potentially next summer, and then having a year of while the recplex is working towards completion. And again, it not only benefits our youth groups, our high school, but outside rentals, but also our band now has the option potentially to practice in the afternoons and not at 6:30 at night after the soccer teams and football team are done, because that new field in the fall would not be a baseball, softball field. It would be lined for football and soccer. So that's the number one thing that I put forward. The other things would be, there's an area that is now, we're calling it the alumni area. It's just outside, it's between the two fields, the new field and the existing Walsh field, that really no planning was done for. It's an open space. It's an amazing opportunity for us to create a nice gathering area for teams, spectators, things like that. So it would be potentially looking for some money to do a design for that area so that we can come back and maybe make something happen down there. And the last thing would be the third project is, there's a lot of, and again, I don't know, stand here before you, I've done as much research as I could to prepare, but I can't find whether certain things would be covered. But there's certain things of the existing project that we just didn't as a town have the money to do, like a scoreboard, like dugouts, like certain other things that really will make this project and that field the envy of everyone around us, and double the capacity for us to be able to rent it out and potentially make some revenue for the town and the athletic program. So those are the things that I'm considering kicking around. I apologize for my talking fast, but again, I'm trying to get us out of here. So, any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the schools in your thinking about how to use that extra parcel, have you considered creating a space where people can do different types of exercises? So if you've ever been to the Cumming Center in Beverly, there's like a pathway, and it has different, like, I wouldn't call them machines, but they're like pieces of equipment where you can do different types of exercises and instruction. And I think that would be a really cool idea as a way to like encourage people to do more outside exercise and have fun in that process.
Are those open year round? Like,
Yep.
really? Okay. I've never been. I'd have to check it
if you've ever been
out.
to the Cumming Center, one of the main buildings, there's like a pathway by the water. And I walked it once, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I would love to have something like that here.
Yeah.
That is part of one of the phases of the recplex, have the stretching
Okay.
area and have some machines and stuff so you can do
That's helpful.
exercises and stretch out.
That's helpful.
Do you have some round numbers? Do you have any ideas of where we'd be on that?
Yeah, and this may shock everybody, so I apologize, but they get, because everything that we did last year to get approval, to get it to town meeting, not just for the tennis courts, but the project that I talked about, the baseball, softball, adding lights to the upper turf, we went through the 10 different meetings with all the different boards, and Gale Associates had estimates for certain things. I've updated estimates, so specifically the lighting for the field, they need 8 poles to light that entire area, and it's somewhere between $875,000 and $950,000 is just to light that area.
But the infrastructure is in for that?
It is. So what they did is they ran conduit under all the surfaces that were not, diggable, that we've paved already, things like that. So The design is done, the design's been approved, it's been, vetted by all the different groups in North Andover, so it's more just funding.
What about your new racquetball court? Is that something you'd want to light too, or is that the same infrastructure?
I would love to. That was one more of a sensitive issue, mainly because it was so close to the wetlands and is a little bit closer to our neighbors. I mean, I would anywhere. I would love to, maximize the ability to give people access, especially the tennis courts and racquetball and pickleball courts. Mainly because in the springtime, our tennis teams use that pretty much from right after school till, call it 6 o'clock at night. So the window of opportunity for our community to use it is definitely diminished until we get more light later in the spring.
Well, they say when you add lights, you add like 40 to 70%, use time. It's essentially like adding another field without, having another field. But and to be clear though, the lights, we'll talk more about it when you kind of bring your presentation forward. But the lights could be used by any approved city organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the high school isn't using it, it could be local soccer. It could be a club team where you're making money off of it.
Yep.
Correct?
As long as it's permitted, and
Yeah.
we'll have the capability to put the lights on and off with our phone through an app.
Oh, cool.
That's yeah.
In the dugouts, what are we thinking on that?
So the dugouts roughly are 50,000 apiece. So I mean, we need 4 of them. We just can't do 1 or 2. It would be 4 dugouts because of the 2 fields. So it's roughly 200,000 for that.
My understanding is if it's a capital expense and it's part of a recreation project, it is potentially eligible, correct?
Yeah, probably.
When you're talking about
Most of it.
scoreboards and dugouts and
obviously,
things.
turf can't be, but
Not turf,
most,
but like some of those
yeah,
supporting
I
things.
do think most, and I do know that. I mean, remember the lights at Drummond were one of the very first projects I think CPC funded back in the very beginning. Yeah. So. But that's
Great.
Good.
Guys,
good
thanks for
sign.
the
Thanks,
opportunity.
Steve.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
great.
All right.
Good. Thank you. And I think, by the way, Steve, you guys did a great job last year taking that stuff through town meeting because there was some contention and some issues and so forth, and I think it was managed very well on your part, so. well
I
done, yeah.
appreciate that. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of emotions and feelings that were involved,
Yeah.
and we wanted to make sure we did it right. So,
Yeah.
thanks.
Great. Good.
Thanks.
Great. So anybody else? I see there's some members of the audience who haven't spoken. Maybe you're just here to listen, which is great. Thank you. If you do have any questions, we meet on the second Thursday every month. So if you're gluttons for punishment, come at 7 o'clock or tune it in on TV. So, yeah. So, okay, good. So, well, great. So at this point, Zach, we're through sort of the public part of the meeting and we're on to our internal business, right? Yeah, so, were you able to get the numbers for September out? I just didn't remember seeing them.
Yeah, through September. It was missing, we're missing like some of the interest. It was just a delay internally, but yeah, I included it on the agenda.
Okay, I mean, if we don't have them for everybody, why don't we just hold it till next time? I would like to go in a little bit and see if there's any projects that we can close, and, so. Good. And anything else we need to do?
Just the minutes.
Yeah. So does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted at our last meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oops. Yeah, I am, yeah. I can't right there. Bill, do you want to do any items on this? What? You want to do, yeah.
And before we adjourn, we want to take a moment and express our appreciation for Zach Melcher as our town liaison the past few years. Zach is moving on in his career, and we wish him all the best. And I just want to say, over the past couple of years, he's definitely made us smarter, more organized, and kept us on track. We really appreciate it. It's been a noticeable difference, and we wish you all the best. We have a little token of our appreciation. within Massachusetts ethical guidelines. That was laid out. So thank you very much, Zach. and
Paper clips.
Best of luck.
You're lucky to get you.
You know, that paper has to have some inherent value to it.
Okay, well, does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn, John.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great.
Thank you, John.